Let's talk some sports, baby.
Taken by Iguodala. Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by Jones.
And remember, make tomorrow better than today, and make today better than yesterday. And you know what we gonna do. We gonna holler at you until next time, baby.
See South. South now has quite the quarterback complement, but you're going to have to put a team around them. The Panthers picked the highest, followed by the Bucks, Falcons, and then the Saints. All teams have their first-round pick, and all have at least 5 overall picks. Jay, you and the Panthers are on the clock at 7. Who you got?
Yeah, so typically the way I do these draft needs is I start from the quarterback position and I work my way down to the defensive backfield. So I looked at guard. I think they're pretty weak there on that offensive line. And then I got to the defense. And that defense is pretty bad. There's only 4 guys on their defensive roster at this time that I would want starting for me. Brian Burns, Kawan Short, Shaq Thompson, and Dante Jackson. The rest of them, I don't want no part of them unless they're backups or special teams guys or any other jobs along that line. So I wouldn't be mad at Matt Rule if he went defense for every position in this for every draft pick in this draft. I think at number 7, if Isaiah Simmons slips to you, I think you definitely consider him. But I would I think Derek Brown will wind up being the pick from defensive tackle from Auburn, and then on down the line, defense. I don't know, Trayvon Diggs, Grant Delpit, other significant defenders. Go get them.
Yeah, I'm with Jay on this. I didn't even look at the offense. I went defensive line, cornerback, linebacker with the respective positions. I went Neville Gilmore from Oklahoma for the defensive line. For corner, I went Jeff Okudah from Ohio State or C.J. Henderson out of Florida. And then for linebacker, I went with Marcus Bailey out of Purdue. So, yeah, defensive line, cornerback, and linebacker.
Yeah, no argument from me either. There's really that defense is not very good, and I think, like I said earlier, this is where Derek Brown is going to stop. I just don't think he's going to fall past 7. They're going to be looking at all the the premier talent. You're talking about your Jeff Okudahs and Simmons and whatnot in case of a slip or a bunch of runs on quarterbacks, but I really do think this is where Derek Brown stops and comes off the board, unfortunately for my Jags. He's going to fill a big hole left by guys like Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe and even Luke Kuechly. So if Brown's gone, or if they really want to trade down, which they could do, I mean, he is an enticing prospect. They could trade down and get some extra ammo because they're going to need a lot of help, as we've kind of beat on a little bit. You can still fill your defensive tackle need with someone like you just said, Drink, or with if Ken Law's still around, depending on which pick you wind up with. But then also I did look at the middle linebacker position with either Jacob Phillips from LSU or Jordan Brooks from Texas Tech to go ahead and fill in where Luke Kuechly was. All right, Drink, let's go ahead and go over to Tampa Bay. They're picking, looks like 14th. Who you got?
Oh yeah, so I had to go with the offensive line. The other day I was online and I googled Tampa Bay Buccaneers and there was a help wanted sign for the offensive line. Listen, here's the deal: you got to protect your asset. Your asset that you got in the offseason was the GOAT, Tom Brady. So you got to get somebody to protect them. Right here, I'm looking at Andrew Thomas coming out of Georgia to be that protection. Listen, the other 2 positions need to be on the defense. That secondary was horrible, and horrible. Rest in peace. So I'm looking at the cornerback, Trayvon Diggs coming out of Alabama. And because keep it with the tradition of going 3 different positions, I went with the running back position for the 3rd one because those 2 glue sticks that they got in the backfield, those guys are not going to cut it. Listen, I understand that Ronald Jones is okay, but I just think you got to listen. So I went with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. And if you able to get him, you should get him. Now I'm not saying that you shouldn't get a running back that's before him, but I think this is the guy that'll be available by the time they do pick in the 3rd round or whatnot. So I went with him. So there was offensive tackle, cornerback, and running back for the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I think offensive tackle has to be the first pick. I get the feeling it's probably going to be Andrew Thomas, although if Thomas goes before some of these other guys like Wills-Worths and Becton, I think you got to get one of those guys. And I would the worst case scenario here is all those guys to be gone, and then I don't know what you do then. I guess I don't know. The second need I would go defensive back. I looked at that. I looked at that defensive backfield. When your most notable name is Carlton Davis, that just screams trouble. So I don't know. You want to go corner? Maybe you get Noah Igbenboney out of Auburn, or you want to go safety? Get Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota. I think either one would help. I don't know if it can get much worse back there. And then running back, I like Edwards-Helaire. I think he's interesting here. But if you get to the second round and Jonathan Taylor slips to you in mid-second round, I think you go Jonathan Taylor here. But if he doesn't, I still think you address it later, hopefully with a guy like Zach Moss out of Utah.
Yeah, no argument here again, guys. You're talking about left tackle being a really important position. Andrew Thomas makes the most sense because he's projected to be a little bit behind some of those other guys y'all mentioned, and he's got a lot of starting experience. You can plug him in day one, hour one. He's got to hit the ground running probably more than some of these other guys might, and that's important because your window is very short. And I know most teams don't draft for now, but if there was a team that was drafting for now, it would be Tampa Bay. So he's going to have that experience to do that from day one. And again, I agree with the running back position. You got to get a guy that can move the chains and at least keep you in second and short and third and short, where Tom Brady is the most effective. So a guy like Jonathan Taylor is a guy that he touched the ball, he's getting 4 yards. I mean, it's just forget about it. So that's a guy I like a lot in the second round. And if they mess up or a bunch of tackles go off the board early, defensive back is pretty horrible. So if C.J. Henderson's still hanging out or some of these other first round sort of talent guys we've been talking about are there, it would not hurt at all to get an upgrade at that position. All right, Jay, we got the Falcons up next. They're picking just after them at 16. What do you see the Falcons doing?
I think with the departure of Desmond Trufant, cornerback's a pretty glaring need for them. So I'm looking at Christian Fulton out of LSU. I think he makes a lot of sense there. Running back, I wanted to go DeAndre Swift here. A little Georgia connection, him and Gurley in Atlanta. But I don't see that happening. I'm looking at Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know you got Todd Gurley, but I still think he's going to need some assistance. I don't know if he's going to be ever fully capable of carrying that huge load that he's carried for the Rams in years past. So I'm looking at him as a second need. And I think defensive end, I think they could use a little bit of juice in the pass rush game. I know you got Dante Fowler in there to replace Vic Beasley, but I'm looking at Jonathan Greenard out of Florida. I still think they could use a little more juice in that pass rush.
Yeah, I'm with Jay on the cornerback position. I also had Christian Fulton and A.J. Terrell. If Christian Fulton is off the board by the time they pick. I went with defensive end as my second need. I went with Kavion Chason. If he is on the board, there's a good chance he could be on the board. So I went with him out of LSU. And then my third was an interior offensive lineman. They lost their guard, and they don't really have a good replacement for him. So I went with John Simpson out of Clemson for that. So, yeah, that was cornerback, defensive end, and interior lineman.
Yeah, it kind of seems like when you read about what the Falcons are going to be wanting to do, everything kind of screams defense. Now, I'm kind of with y'all. I'm not really sold at running back or offensive line, as a lot of other people seem to be. But it does seem kind of irresponsible to mock anything besides a defensive frontline player at that first pick at 16. I think this is where Javon Kinlaw would stop falling. I think if he was at this point still on the board, that's where they would hit him and get him there. Also, you got to look at your edge prospects too. But you did swap Vic Beasley for Dante Fowler, so they might want to focus more on the interior. It just kind of depends what they have around him. And then in the later rounds, offensive line definitely does come to mind again. I'm not really sold on him, and I think that's why Todd Gurley may not have the best year there. But the running back core is also behind Gurley. It's very questionable, and you have the injury concerns, legitimate injury concerns that, hey, Gurley might have some problems still. So I think in round 2, I would be targeting the offensive line, and then round 3 or 4, running back, say LaMichael Pirine from Florida. He's a good guy that he has a good mix of skills. He can run, and he can also catch. Kind of gives you that sort of Devontae Freeman light version, that same sort of plug and play in your offense. So hopefully they can figure out how to get that back on track there. All right, Drink, let's wrap up with the Saints picking 24. What do you got for them?
Oh, yeah, I think first and foremost, we got to look at that linebacker position. I'm looking at Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma or Patrick Queen out of LSU. You hope one of these guys slide to you, and if they do, it's a no-brainer. Go and scoop them up. And then my second position, to me, is wide receiver, just simply because, listen, I know they got Emmanuel Sanders. I know they got Traquan Smith. And I'm not saying those guys are bums by any means. But, hey, it's time to get you another cornerstone, another guy that you really, really do depend on the opposite side of Michael Thomas. In that regard, I'm looking at like a bigger body guy, maybe a guy because let me backtrack. A bigger, long down the field threat. I love Michael Thomas, but Michael Thomas is not a down the field threat. You need a guy that can actually fly down the field and stretch that defense. I can't say this enough. I'm looking at Brandon Adekayi out of Arizona State, pretty under the radar pick. And I think by the time they go around to picking a wide receiver, he will still be on the board. And then offensive line. Listen, we know the Saints have an incredible offensive line. I'm not being disrespectful of their offensive line, but some of those guys are old. They're on the tail end. So I'm looking at Eric McCoy out of Texas A&M to come to them and give them some instant offensive line play.
Oh, sorry. I was just on the phone with Marcus Peters. He disagrees. He thinks Michael Thomas is a great downfield threat. So with that being said, with that being said, I don't have wide receiver as a need for the Saints. I agree with you 100% on the linebacker position. I love me some Demario Davis, but he is 31. Kiko Alonso is 29, but with the injuries, he's probably a little bit older than that. So I'm with you 100%. Kenneth Murray, Patrick Queen, I think one of those guys makes a lot of sense here. And then the interior of that offensive line, it got me a little concerned because they got pushed around by Minnesota in that playoff game. So I think maybe Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan or Lloyd Cushenberry out of LSU, one of those guys you can plug in at one of those guard positions. And then quarterback, I think you got to seriously consider drafting. You lost Teddy Bridgewater. You got to have a replacement plan in place for Drew Brees. And if Drew Brees hurts his thumb, courtesy of Aaron Donald again, I don't think you want Taysom Hill out there throwing the ball 35 times a game. I'm looking at Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason.
Okay, well, I'm still surprised in there because I also had a quarterback. I think this might be where Jordan Love winds up. I think you're talking about a project quarterback. You'll have some time to work with him, but you're talking about a guy that you want like the most talent, or perceived talent, or possible talent. Then that's the kind of guy you could look at. So at 24, if they did take Jordan Love, I would not be surprised. I think he'll be there. But, you're talking about Brees hanging it up soon, even after this year, because, again, you're not just drafting for this year. You're drafting for your years to come up. And they've already kind of made it clear, like, hey, we probably don't want Taysom Hill being our guy, so why not take the best project quarterback available at 24? If not, then, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's funny. I had the same two guys written down, Patrick Queen and Kenneth Murray. We don't compare notes, but that was who I had as well. And I do agree with Drink. I think wide receiver is at least a bit of an issue because after Thomas and Sanders getting up there in age, there's not a whole lot left there, kind of be desired. So if I'm getting a project quarterback, maybe I come back later in rounds 3 or 4 or 5 and I get a wide receiver to start working with him early on.